The year 2021 was great for strategy game fans. We got Humankind, the end of the New Frontier Pass for Civilization 6, also known as Civ 6, giving us monstrosities like Babylon that probably constitute a crime against humanity, and Crusader Kings 3, not to mention the announcement of Victoria 3. But everyone forgets about Mohawks Games' latest release, Old World. Old World is a 4X game focused on the classical era Mediterranean, with antiquity civilizations like Rome, Greece, Persia, and Carthage being a mix between Civ 6 and Crusader Kings 3. But despite being a new release, after the first couple of days and weeks, and the strategy game community, myself included, milked the views out of it for like a week, we really didn't hear anything else about it for the next 8 months. Now, like my Humankind video, this isn't going to be my personal beliefs and likes and why I don't want to play Old World, nor about the current state of the game as it is. It focuses on the reasons Old World, as of this video, is not doing so well as a broad demographic. I will be comparing this game to other 4X games and Paradox games a lot, mainly because I kind of have to show why this game isn't doing as well as its competitors. So if all 4 of you Old World players, that's a joke, chill out, are going to get angry or mad for that reason, or maybe even because of the joke, this probably isn't the video for you. In fact, leaving now would probably tank my watch time, which does a lot more than a dislike and a mean comment, which fuels engagement. But again, you're a free person, so do as you want. Let me know down below why you agree or disagree with my reasons and why you think Old World failed, and if you enjoy the video, leave a like and subscribe, and do not miss out on future videos. Now, before we start, if you want to just get into the reasons why I think it's failing, you could skip to the timestamps below, but before we actually start, let's take a look at Old World and my criteria of failing. Usually, I look at the Steam database, and any game that tanks 90% of its player base in a certain time frame, maybe about 3 to 4 months, is what I would call failing. All games not named Elden Ring lose players in the first few weeks, before stabilizing, losing about 69 to 70%, nice, of their player base. But the problem with Old World and why I haven't made this video yet, even though I had this idea even before my Humankind video, is because Old World is exclusive to the Epic Games Store, and they don't track concurrent players like Steam does. So what changed? Well, of course, the most dominant, manly, and based information provider I used was Reddit. Now, when going to, oh my god, I can't even say that without laughing, but now when I'm going to the Old World's official subreddit, it's more barren of a wasteland than the Gobi Desert after a drought. Nobody is there. At about 2:30 p.m. EST on a Monday, Eastern Standard Time for those of you who don't know, there was one person with the subreddit. That person was me, and over the course of about 24 hours, the Reddit viewer count fluctuated between 3 to 6 players max. The last post was posted 3 days ago now. Now, I know Reddit isn't the most accurate way to check how popular a game is. After all, maybe they just don't like Reddit and there's secretly an underground forum where the player base is in the millions and formed a cult to make it look like a barren wasteland as they prepare world conquest before putting everyone to the sword who even thought about playing Humankind or Civ 6 like a classical era Soviet Union. But then I decided to check what YouTubers are making Humankind videos. Of course, if a game is popular enough, people are going to be making videos about the game. Not the best tell, again, of how a game is going to be doing, but I'm trying my best here to collect information since there really isn't any way for me to look how many players actually play the game. And the latest video was a singular Let's Play finale on October 21st, 2021 on the first couple of pages. That was about 3 months ago. So taking all this into account, I think we can safely say that Old World, for the most part, is, as of 2022, March, a dead game, and by my standards, failed. Considering it was only released out of early access 8 months ago, this shouldn't be the case. Again, if they do end up releasing player numbers and prove me wrong and the game's actually successful, I will apologize and I'll make another video about why it succeeded or something, but from my view and from the information I was able to collect, Old World is a failing game. Now let's get into the reasons why. Also, I forgot to mention in the first recording, Old World has about as many videos as my Twitch channel does over the last year. There's literally 0 people making or watching Twitch videos on Old World, so I'm 100% sure that we can safely say the game is failing. The reasons I'm going to be giving aren't exactly reflective of my opinions. I'm trying to be objective since everyone has a different opinion and likes and dislikes, so I'm trying to find the reason on why the broad demographics of 4X players especially don't really like Old World and aren't playing it. There are 5 reasons, in my opinion, on why Old World did fail, and they all lead up to a singular reason, which I will reveal at the end of the video. Gotta get that YouTube dough after all. The 5 reasons, which will go in depth in about a minute, are 1. Epic Games exclusive, 2. It does nothing better than other 4X games, 3. Restricted potential player base, 4. Visuals, and 5. Information overload. Now, let's get into the first reason. The first reason is something I think we can all agree about, no doubt in my mind, and that is the game being released as an Epic Games exclusive, with no release on any other consoles or even Steam. Now, this is probably one of the bigger reasons, as Steam essentially has a near monopoly on the PC video game experience, with Epic Games being the only competitor. But that's like me saying in my basketball years in middle school, I was a quote-unquote competitor to LeBron James. With no release on any other consoles, that really limits the potential player base because, again, not only has the game been restricted to one platform, so at best we're probably looking at 40% of all gamers, but 90% of that platform is taken out of the picture because of the fact the biggest publisher in the PC gaming world, Steam, is removed from the equation, which had an effect on not only the amount of players who could buy it, but also how the marketing was going to work. Not many people knew about the game until the last week-ish before the release from Early Access, and Steam, where a lot of people are going to be getting new info aside from maybe YouTube, isn't going to promote a game that isn't launching on their platform, obviously. Now, the game is releasing in Q2 of 2022 on Steam, but at the end of the day, the potential hype has subsided, even as an Early Access game. This led to a much smaller cap as to the amount of players who would check on the game and who would even know about the game, and is a very large reason why Old World has been struggling since release. The second reason is more personal, I'll admit, and that is that there is nothing this game does objectively better than any of its competitors. Humankind, for example, has a much better combat system than Civilization 6, with the fact that you also get to pick a new culture for every era is going to appeal to most people. There were differences to Civ that appealed to a large percent of the player base, which led to Humankind having the early success as it is before it fell off for its own specific reasons. Old World doesn't have that. The main differences are minor to combat and the orders mechanic replacing movement. It's a mix between CK and Civ and doesn't really do anything special as a separate entity, as it has the unique units and specific civs of, Civilization 6, for example, with workers and settlers that have to settle in specific locations, which I find kind of weird. Same movement principle, but your leaders grow old and die, and you have different events, like a Paradox game with even some of its diplomacy sprinkled in. Which I'm not saying isn't interesting, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really do anything notably different from CK or Civ that would bring a large percent of the player base to come over to the game. Like, no one playing those games is going to be like, man, I can't wait to spend $40 on a game that has orders instead of movement speed. Some things might be marginally better like combat, but it doesn't have a reason for Paradox or Civ players to make the switch. Why play Old World when, if you like the mechanics, you can just play the games the mechanics are based off of? And no, you can't necessarily play both games for the most part, because people have lives. And after a long day of work, you're going to play what you enjoy, whether it be Humankind, Civ 6, Call of Duty, Fortnite, Minecraft. There really isn't a lot of time for people to be playing like 3 or 4 games at once. Usually we're creatures of habit, and after a long day of work, we want to play what stimulates the dopamine, what makes us happy. But games like CK are more established titles, and Civ has been developed and updated for 6 years. There's a lot more nuance and I guess things in the game, and it has been polished over the last little bit. They need something that is objectively better, like other games that broke the scene. I know it isn't a strategy game, but Fortnite added building to a third-person shooter and was a pretty early adopter of the Battle Royale genre. Elden Ring changed the open world formula, and even Humankind has incredible combat which is objectively much better than Civ. And yes, I did make a Humankind Why It Failed video, but that game was more for the reason of technical issues and being a new game that was released bare bones, rather than the actual foundation gameplay, which I thought was pretty good. It still released to huge Steam player numbers, it just fell quickly afterwards due to the aforementioned reasons. Old World has nothing I can see that would keep prospective players picking this game over any of the others, as the only thing is really the orders mechanic, which isn't objectively viewed as better by the broad player base as a whole compared to traditional movement speed. The third reason is a restricted potential player base, which is already amplified by the Epic Games only release. This game is released in antiquity and takes place in a specific time-place in history like a Paradox game. The issue with that is that it further reduces the amount of potential players who would try out your game. Most 4X gamers are interested in history, right? If you don't like World War II or the Romans or ancient China or anything like that, you'd probably rather play Fortnite or Minecraft or anything else. Games like Civ and Humankind take place over human history with leaders from around the world and different time periods, and Humankind goes even further, letting you mix and mash different cultures to your liking. Old World takes place over a specific time period like a Paradox game, and the fact that Paradox games like Hoi 4 don't do as well as Civ, even though they are still successful, is for a big part at least due to this reason. After all, if you aren't interested in World War II, why would you pick Hoi 4 over Civ if you're interested in antiquity and maybe the medieval era? Where in Civ, you can play a Civ over any time period. But the bigger problem with this is the fact that combined with the only people interested in this game going to be ones interested in antiquity, you also only released it for a small publisher, which combined drastically limits the amount of people who would be interested in the game. The next reason isn't necessarily a bad thing, or even my opinion, but more so, again, something that limits the potential casual player base. For any video game, most players are going to be casual. Most people in specific games aren't going to be playing it hardcore, unless it's maybe something like League of Legends, where I'd assume most of the players are hardcore players. Therefore, a game geared with a casual audience in mind is going to do better than a game focused on a specific niche of players. Again, I love Civ 5's art style a lot more than Civ 6's Looney Tunes cartoonish graphics, but the reason they made that change was to gear towards more casual players who don't really want to spend years learning how to play a game. I am a hardcore Civ player, but not really a hardcore EU4 player, even though I do like the game a lot. But unlike Civ, EU4 took me years to get into, as whenever I tried it out, I didn't understand what the hell was going on most of the time, and I still don't really. Ditto for Hearts of Iron 4. Old World is the same thing. I'm sure with enough time, most people could get into the game, but most people aren't willing to put in that time investment for a promise that the game's going to be good later, when you could just play another game that you enjoy from the jump. The UI in this game is really in your face and everywhere. There's so much going on at one point that it's a lot for a new player to take in. The UI makes the game less visually appealing and a lot more daunting, and while I personally like the graphics of this game, they are, I guess for lack of a better word, more boring realistic, I guess. I don't even know. It's just kind of like Civ 5, but it has a boring color palette, which again, say what you want about, this game is more realistic, go back to playing other games like Farmville, you filthy casual, if you really want the bright colors. You know, that's exactly what most players do. This game doesn't visually pull in many players, it's dark colors that don't pop out at you, even compared to more serious games like Paradox, and especially not when compared to other 4X games like Civ or Humankind. This leads to, again, fewer players who want to try this game out, and if you take a random person on the street and tell them to compare other 4X games with Old World, which one is more appealing, I guarantee you at least 90 to 95% are going to say anything other than Old World. Again, the color palette isn't bad necessarily, I personally prefer it to bright cartoonish graphics, but most casual players who make up a large portion of the fan base in any game don't. And with other options on the table, it's not hard to see why they wouldn't even want to try Old World. Information overload is the final main reason before we get to the juicy, all-encompassing reason, and I'll be brief. This game has so much information that for the first 5 to 10 hours, it's mainly going to be reading all the information you can and trying to understand how specific mechanics work. It's a game that really gets good after 100 hours, like EU4 for example, or other Paradox games. This article I found, linked in the description below, says it beautifully. To paraphrase, the game isn't built for new players, well, because of the fact that there is no central information hub, not a good one at least. The Civilopedia isn't very well made, as it just gives you what the tooltip says, and so you either have to figure it out on your own or accept ignorance. With all this information in the game, you're going to spend a large majority of the first 10 hours just trying to understand how everything works, and the comments and myself concur with the statement. There is too much information overload, especially for new players who are going to struggle to understand what's going on, and with the central information hub being subpar, to say it mildly, that is going to lead to most people dropping the game in the first couple of hours. To end this segment off, ask yourself this: how many people are going to be willing to spend the first 5 hours, I guess even 5 hours of a game, just trying to understand and read how the game works? In this day and age, not very many. And now for the final big real reason why Old World failed. Think of this as using polymerization from Yu-Gi-Oh! To combine all the other reasons into one specific summary. This game was made for a very specific niche in every category. You need to be patient, willing to spend hours reading and understanding a game made for fun, love Antiquity Civilization, love the realistic dull color palette, download/be an Epic Games player, and like the minor changes to combat and move orders versus other strategy games. That's a lot. And due to this reason, the people who do like Old World are few and far between, as if you like the graphics, you might hate the UI or the information overload. If you like everything about this game, you might not even know it exists, because it's only an Epic Games exclusive as of right now. All this leads to the fact that this game was made for a very specific audience in mind, that being 9.5 out of 10 gamers are going to have at least a big problem, maybe even multiple, with this game. What can Old World do to improve? Yeah, I don't know. We have to wait and see how the Steam release goes, but I don't necessarily have high hopes for this game. If they prove me wrong, I'll take it on the chin and eat my words out of my own butthole, don't get me wrong. I'm not preying on the game's downfall like Crusaders did to Muslims in like the 7th century or whatever, but what do you think? Leave your opinions down below and let me know any other why did this game succeed or why did this game fail video ideas I can make in the future. And if you do enjoy, leave a like and subscribe to not miss out on future content. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.